Welcome back to another episode of Tales from the Trenches, stories from our peer groups and conversations that we've been having with our peer group friends. As always, we aren't sharing details about any particular member, but talking about topics that are near and dear to their heart or have come up at least recently. And oftentimes what happens is it comes up frequently. And so we're going to go ahead and talk about that today. My name is Adam Hanneman. I have been in the MSP space for the better part of a couple of decades. With me, as always, is Natalie. Natalie, how you doing?
Doing well.
And Natalie's got tons of a peer group and other MSP experience as well. And so we're looking forward to talking to you all today about training and professional development and all of those kinds of things, because in our space, in the MSP space, trying to get your team to level up and do things to kind of move everything forward is a challenge, right? There's lots of pieces that go into it. There's different certifications that you need to get your different competencies in a number of different areas, and also your team and your techs, they want to learn some new stuff and pad their resume, right? So there's lots of things we can talk about. We're going to start with kind of talking about the benefits, and we're like having a good training plan and professional development plan helps you as MSP business owners, or helps the MSPs kind of level their business up. So Natalie, what are your thoughts on building out some benefits or talking about the benefits of training and professional development for MSPs?
Yeah, so there's definitely some clear benefits to having training plans. One is in the technical space is staying ahead of evolving tech, right? If you cannot stay ahead, if you're not constantly learning, constantly evolving in the evolution of tech, your MSP will go stagnant. So having that plan kind of match the fast-paced changing technologies is definitely going to benefit your MSP. So you have to go with that. And then also driving client value. You have to be able to have that professional development. It just translates into better service,
Mm-hmm.
better client outcomes. We're fast-paced, high-stress business. But ultimately, we're a customer service business that's providing IT solutions. So you have to be able to drive that client value, and having that plan, that path for your employees definitely can benefit with client value, client retention, and quite honestly, employee retention and growth.
Oh,
So I feel like that's both important.
absolutely. And the other piece is that having an actual plan versus like, hey, we need to get some starts this year, but having an actual plan and making that visible makes it far easier for everybody to know kind of what needs to happen this week, this
Hmm.
year, this quarter, this year, whatever that looks like. And really having that solid plan put together makes it so that way it allows you all to prioritize what's going on, because as MSPs, we always run into the idea that there's always something else going on. And boy, I think we could table this training right now because we're just so busy with all the things, which is one of the challenges that MSPs run into when we're thinking about training. So now, tell me a little bit about your thoughts around the ideas or some of the challenges that you've seen in your travels with MSPs with trying to get training in.
The biggest one I hear, I've experienced, is lack of time or bandwidth.
Hmm.
There's always a fire. There's always, you're always handling tickets, you're always handling a client problem, you're always handling invoicing. Leadership is always tied up. There's always going to be a fire. And we tell people in peer groups that all the time. You have to be able to take time to work on the business instead of in it. And that goes from dispatcher all the way to owner. Let's be honest. It doesn't matter what position you're in. You have to take time to actually work on yourself and work on the business, regardless if it's training or anything. And that's one of the main challenges that I see. And then also, just misalignment or no career, or they feel there's no career path. MSP is hard because growth stages are hard. And so what works at 5 people doesn't work at 10 and doesn't work at 30. And you don't know what your next step necessarily is. So it's really hard to build this career path when maybe the owner doesn't even know what good looks like at 10 people when they're only 5.
Well, and also if you think about the career path and the things where where techs typically struggle, or just people in general typically struggle about doing any kind of certification work is if it doesn't align with their career objectives, it isn't moving the
Yeah.
needle forward for them. Oftentimes, they're people are willing to do one or two of those things, but if it's only like, hey, I need you to take this cert for this thing because we need to get this gold competency with insert vendor name here or whatever, that only goes so far before people are like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm kind of done with that. And so you need to have a bit of a mix, which is kind of where that plan comes in, right? Because if you can say, hey, you know what, we need to get this competency with vendor X this quarter, but next quarter do a thing for you, right? Like, and or just, and that's where having that plan and making it visible is really helpful too, right? Just having even if it's documented, like, here's the order of operations. This quarter we're doing this one, next quarter we're doing that one, later this year we're doing this, and then if we do all the things across the whole team, we're going to be much further down the path as we would have been ordinarily. One of the things that we used to run into was that sometimes people are bad test takers. That happens to not be me, but some people really like the fact that there's a test for certification is like that overwhelming, not maybe not fear, but their apprehension about kind
Well,
of like
yeah.
getting into it. Natalie, have you run into that, and what have been some of the methods you've helped your techs kind of move forward with that?
100%. We've came across that. I had a tech take um, Net Plus multiple times. It wasn't that he didn't know what he was doing. None of that. Just the act of taking the test just terrified him. Um, and it legitly wasn't that he didn't know. He could
Right.
pass all the practice tests. So really, what we decided was, show me you can pass the practice test. Like, just bring me a practice test with this score or higher. I don't necessarily have to have you have the paper that says you have this certification.
Sure.
That's not what the certification was for. The certification, depending on the cert, obviously there was sometimes we needed the actual cert, but if I had somebody else that could pass it just to have the cert, then great, I can use that. But sometimes it was, I need you to have the knowledge. So if they could show me that they could take the practice test and pass it with flying colors, that was good enough. And we could accept that and we could do the practice test, print it out, put that there, and then we would have somebody else that had passed the test and have, questions back and forth. And that was good enough. I know I happen to be somebody that can take a test and be fine, but I 100% know that there's some people, proctored tests for them, terrifying. Having somebody sit there and watch them take a test, absolutely just anxiety ridden, and it's just not for them. So we went to take a practice test, show me you can take it, pass it, and then show me you can actually put the knowledge into practice. And that was good.
Sure. Yeah, the one thing I used to run into with that was, well, for me, I'm a pretty good test taker. In fact, I'm usually pretty excited about kind of getting through the thing. But even though I'm pretty good at it, but I've failed a couple different tests, especially in the MCSE side of the world, um, is even though I'm pretty good at it and I feel pretty confident in it, and I'm usually feel pretty good about the knowledge going in, still a little bit of nerves going into the whole testing, even though I feel like I'm pretty good at it. So for one of the things that we used to do was try to like pair a couple people up and like have them
Mhm.
have study buddies, and there's a little bit of, sometimes it's just some confidence, from having somebody else go, yeah, you clearly know this thing, you're good, we're a coach I used to talk to, they always say, like, the hay is in the barn, right? That you've done the work, go do the thing, go take the test, and the result will be what the result is. And if you fail, okay, then we'll just do it again, right?
Yeah.
Or when you pass, we're gonna have a nice lunch or whatever. I just kind of make it easy. Give folks an opportunity to work with another partner, even if their study buddy, it maybe is doing a different exam, right? Sometimes it's just having an accountability buddy, right? Somebody else is doing the thing, right? And sometimes I found some of our engineers needed different things, right? Sometimes there's some different motivators, right? motivators or like or guideposts or milestones, right? For me, I always needed someone to say, "Hey, by the end of Q2, we need this certification." So friggin' go and do it. And I would go, okay, well, the end of Q2 is June 30th, meaning I want to take the test about June 20th. So that way, if I fail it, I can take it again before the end of the quarter. And I would work my way backwards from there,
Mhm.
which means I probably start studying in the beginning of June because that's just kind of the nature of kind of how I roll. But for me, I needed that deadline, and it needed to be like an actual deadline versus like some artificial thing. Because if it was some artificial thing, I would find a reason to kick it down the road. Because like to your point earlier, is that there's always a fire, there's always something going on, right? So, um, what are some of the motivators and some of the things that you've seen in your world as you've kind of worked with your MSP space?
Yeah, so I'm the person that actually has to schedule the test. Like it has to be on the I have to literally have the test scheduled and work toward that date because whether I feel like I'm ever prepared for it or not, I go into every test thinking I'm going to fail it regardless. I mean, you've experienced that with me. I'm
Hmm.
like, I'm going to fail it all. So I have to have it on the calendar. We would have it on the calendar. You have to take the practice test by X and then schedule by Y. We would motivate them by, especially if the ones that were very nervous about failing, we would say, hey, just go ahead and buy the package that has the test plus the retake for $100. And they're like, oh, but then if I pass it, you're wasting $100. I'm like, well, no, I'm actually gaining it because if you fail it and then you don't get, then I'm wasting another $300 or $400.
Right.
So I would rather waste the 100 now because I know you're going to pass it. But then it takes that pressure off of them because then I'm like, no, I'm out $100. It's fine. It's in the budget, no big deal. And so it would take that part off of them, and then they would feel like, okay, I don't have that. We set generally 6 month blocks for them. So in this 6 months is when you have your deadline to keep them kind of like, hey, you get X amount for this 6 months and X amount for this, and you need to do something in the 6 months. At that particular MSP, one of our core values was continuing education. So it was very, we were very involved in making sure that professional development was talked about in one-on-ones, talked about milestones, how are you doing, was tied to your incentive pay, all of these things, and we set goals based on it. And that was not necessarily, it wasn't all tied to monetary. So it was based on what that particular person's motivator was.
Sure. Yeah, because everyone's motivation is a little bit different, right? For me, it's traditionally been sort of either a status and or monetary. I actually had a company once that needed a number of tests taken pretty quickly, and as like I said before, I think I was pretty good at it. And this is, I don't know, like 2007, 2008, 2009, somewhere in there. Um, and uh, they needed a bunch of tests taken quickly, and so they actually gave me a pay increase every time I passed an exam. It wasn't a very big pay increase per one, but you take three, four, five, six tests, and you're getting a few $100 every time you pass one. That adds up into some real money, and it's like ongoing money. Um, and so those are some options, right? And there's a bonus, there's a pat in the back, there's a nice dinner, there's maybe give you a long weekend or an extra couple days of PTO that you can use, like all the different things that would potentially motivate somebody,
Mm-hmm.
are on the table, right? And this is where knowing your team and understanding kind of where their heads at is really important. And this is one of the things I talk about in your one-on-ones and checking in with them too, right? So, if I'm going to take an exam, I don't need someone to check in with me all the time. But having someone check in and say, hey, you ready? You have you scheduled the test and those kind of
Yeah.
things. Having someone to say, hey, remember, you need to, get this done, please,
Yeah.
is really important.
Part of what we found, which was a challenge and something that we had to really kind of sit down, is we found is there as much as I hate to say this, there is some validity to different generations and how they think about career path. So where the younger the generation, they want to know a path, they kind of need to know where they're going. And so, as we hired younger and younger techs and project people and even administrative, they really wanted to see it on paper. And where the challenge was exactly what I said earlier, is that we don't, the company as a whole didn't always know what we were going to look like the next quarter, the next path that we were. So what we tried to do was say, okay, this is what this position could potentially look like. So tier one, tier two, that tier two could go to tier three, or at tier two, you could pick project, or you could pick this, or you could pick this. And not necessarily this is the only option, but this would be potential option. But we also explained to them just because you hit this is not a guarantee.
Right.
So we tried to make sure that they understood that there are options for paths within the company. And this was not just at MSP, this was in a lot of the businesses I worked in, that we wanted you to know that there was paths to go, but it also was partly your responsibility, that although we were investing in you, and I'm a big person of, even if it's not your forever home, that I would rather you leave here better off than when you came in. But that I want you to know that there is some type of path for you. And it's still your responsibility as the employee to have that conversation with me, or with your leader, or with your direct manager, of what your wants are.
Sure.
Where do you want to be? Because I can give you all the paths in the world, but if you can't tell me anything you want to be when you grow up, it doesn't matter how many yellow brick roads I give you. You can't follow something, you can't follow nothing.
Right.
So, you have to have something that you want to do, and you can change your mind,
Right.
but you have to work towards some goal.
Yeah, I think that's a good call out with some generational differences, right? I think, and this isn't like millennial, Gen Z,
No.
whatever, but it's the idea is that having a path, having a defined whatever the next steps are, is helpful for everybody, and
Mm-hmm.
and know that everyone's going to go through these paths at a different rate too, right? So somebody like me, I might jump in and like take 5 or 6 exams in a year, um, and be pretty okay with that. And where that might be really irritating for somebody else, maybe they would rather just do one or two in a year, or one, maybe just do one a year, and maybe they need some additional help. Like there's everyone's going to have a different speed down whatever the path is too. And so it's important to really lean into your one-on-one process, lean into your career development process, because one of the things that I think that the MSP industry gets fair criticism for is just poor development of
Mm-hmm.
people in a general sense. Now, obviously, there are MSPs out there that are knocking this out of the park, but those are typically the minority, versus the majority of like, hey, we're just too busy to kind of do this thing, right? So if you are in a situation where you need some stuff, some certifications done, or you have some higher than average turnover or whatever else, it might be time to think about some of the career pathing and building out a map for your team to grow their careers, because sometimes that's what people really want, and sometimes people really want money, right? But again, it's important for you as a leader and as an owner and as a manager to know what moves the needle for your people.
Well, and you have to also think it's not always about the technical aspect of I have to have this certain tech, or I have to have this certain this. We did professional development for leadership training, emotional intelligence. We did management training, conflict resolution, just personal growth too, because you could have not everyone in the MSP is technical. Some of it operational training, just learning, how can we make the process better? Because there's tons of training out there that an MSP can benefit from. So, we talk to owners all the time of, it's not just about, making sure you have a path for your techs to go up. Every position in the MSP, there should be a path for every type of role. And it's not about, MSP titles are arbitrary at this point, but it's about the role within the MSP. So dispatcher might not be a technical person. So where does dispatcher go if they're not technical? How can they move up in the company? What's their path?
Right.
Things of that nature. And where do your admins go? Things of like that. And then leaning into, do they want to go management? Do they want to go technical account management? manager, customer service, sales. And then maybe you don't have the role for them right now, but you start training them, baby stepping them up so that they can at least get the exposure. Because, like I said, they might change their mind. Maybe they think they want to go into sales, and you start giving them a little bit of the exposure and training before you invest tons of money or send them to a sales boot camp
Hmm.
for them to get into it and say, man, I was totally wrong. And this is not the life for me. And then but you kind of have to give them a little bit of leeway, especially in a small to medium size, because they don't know what they don't know yet.
Yeah, and I appreciate you calling out the idea that not every training needs to be technical, because I think of one of the people that used to work for me a bunch of years ago now, and she had traditionally been a dispatcher, and her career had kind of bounced all over the place at the particular place that we were working with, and she really wanted to kind of lean into projects, and we said, so well, go get this project certification, and we're not going to go full PMP because that was maybe a
Yeah.
bit too far forward, but go get this other thing, and really worked with her on building that training plan out, and over the course of time she got it, and she now is a project manager for a pretty solid MSP, right? So there's plenty of development that can happen there, and there's two other little sort of tangents that come to mind as we think about this training stuff. Is one, it's all about the fact that MSP business owners, by and large, haven't
Hmm.
been trained leaders of people. It's all
Yeah.
kind of natural and self-taught. And so when you have second level leaders, right, your service managers and your COOs and your account management and your project managers and all those folks who are going to be leading people under your organization, it's incumbent on you as a business owner and them as the second level leaders to like seek out some of that leadership training, because everything isn't natural in that regard, and so there's some things to learn. And the second thing is really all about kind of thinking about the vision of the company a few years out in the future, and what roles am I going to need in 3 or 4 or 5 years, and how can I set my people up now to be ready for whatever that
Hmm.
next role is in 3 or 4 or 5 years, or whatever that looks like, right? And get them ready for it, so that way when you're ready to kind of step into that spot, they're ready to go too, and everybody wins in that regard, right? So especially because you can show somebody the path to whatever their future career goals might be,
Yeah.
and say, you know what, if we're going to do our best to kind of get here, wherever here happens to be, in order for us to get there, I'm going to need to get you along the way, so that way you can take over the spot there. That could be a huge motivator for folks, especially if they're not necessarily looking for money, right? That the title difference or the responsibility difference it can be a huge motivator for folks.
Now keep in mind, I'm a big person of owners need training and a path too.
Hmm.
So it's not just about, oh, I need to make it for my employees, I need to make it for this. Owners still need to continue their education. They need to have, leading leaders is totally different than when you were a 5 or 10 person and you just had to keep the wheels on the bus running. So
Right.
I'm a big person of making sure the owners are continuing their education, going out, getting the education of staying ahead of the technology, making sure that they're educating themselves on where business is going, improving their business acumen, making sure that they stay on top of the industry. And that's part of their job as an owner. So the path does not stop just for the employees. This is, like I said, from, dispatcher all the way to owner. There is no position in an MSP that is more important than the other. It's a team effort.
Right.
And every single person needs to be able to work together, because you pull one person out of the little cog, the little wheel, and it can fall apart.
Yep.
So everybody has to be able to have that path, and that includes owners all the way down, from leadership down.
Yeah, and I think this is a good opportunity for us to kind of just talk a minute about kind of how peer groups kind of lean into this as well,
Yeah.
because peer groups, and some of the training that we do here at PAX 8, some of the things that we do kind of overall can really move the needle too, right? So I think back to kind of my early peer group days, I didn't know what I didn't know about being MSP service manager, right, and COO or whatever title happened to have been at the time, and the peer groups were essential to me to understand the things where I didn't know, and then it allowed me to focus on going to learn the thing I didn't know, right? And there's those things can come up for everybody within the organization, but specifically with, I think about the owners, COOs, and service exec managers or service managers.
Mm-hmm.
Those three roles in particular are frequently like you're kind of out doing, like you're the only one in the company doing that thing, and trying to figure out what you should be learning and how you should be learning it can be a challenge. And so you get a whole cohort of people that are like kind of in a similar or same spot as you are, and you guys can work together to figure out your own path that way as well.
Yeah, I will tell you, I mean, that's how we met, but 100%, I didn't even know what it even meant.
Right.
I was like, sure, I'll move over to service. How hard can it be?
Famous last
Oh,
words.
yeah, that's famous last words, right? Same thing I said about procurement. I mean, you buy and sell stuff. How hard can it be? Let's figure this out. But that's kind of my personality though too, is
Hmm.
like, I'll figure it out. Why not? But yeah, it's definitely that whole situation of, yeah, I wouldn't have made it without peer groups. Like
Right.
I wouldn't be here doing this without peer groups. I wouldn't be here doing this without the instructor led training or the books. I mean, I have a whole shelf of books behind me that's doing a book club in our MSP where we all read books together and talked about what we got out of them and all the different tools, the four helpful lists and all the little things you learn,
Right.
and taking that development. And I'm like you, I'll take 6 tests in one year if I can.
Right. Well,
Um,
you know,
so,
and I think that this is a good spot for us to kind of maybe wrap this up, where we think about all of the different stuff that we do. Like our day job is such that we get to spend our time helping other MSPs out. And when you are looking to kind of grow your own career, whether you're an MSP business owner or you're, like you said, a dispatcher or someone working procurement or a tech or whatever else, there's plenty of resources out there. And so two things. Thing one is we obviously would love it if you would check out the peer groups that we're over at PAX 8, check out some of our courses. We both teach a lot of different courses on a number of different things, and we are far from the only people teaching courses over here. So some cool stuff there. The other piece is if you are looking for some help and you're looking for some guidance, I absolutely am happy to have a chat with folks
mhm.
about kind of where you are in your career and talk about that a little bit, because honestly, I see my role, at PAX 8 or in the greater MSP community as someone who can help others out and have a kind of a neutral lens on things, because I figure if we help the industry out in general, everybody gets better for it. And I'm pretty sure, Natalie, I
Yep,
think you'd probably be willing to do that too, right?
100%.
So on the description of this podcast, you'll see both of our LinkedIn profiles. Feel free to connect to us. Obviously, we'll throw the links to all the different PAX 8 peer groups and the instructor-led courses and all those things there as well. As always, Natalie, thank you for your time today, and thank you all for watching and listening to our podcast.